Let's try to imagine something for a second. A reality that isn't made of static, solid stuff, but of pure, living information. A system so incredibly vast, so intricate, that what we see as our universe is really just its final, shimmering output. We're about to pop the hood on creation itself, and our guide is one of the most profound, most cryptic texts out there, the Zohar.
So try to picture this, and I don't mean as a metaphor, but as the actual fundamental physics of existence. You've got these vast streams of supernal light, and each one is a unique frequency of divine will, flowing from an infinite source. And they're not chaotic at all. They travel through this incredible architecture of unseen channels, a cosmic grid just pulsing with life and potential.
These currents of light, they descend. They're on a journey from the most abstract, highest realms of pure thought down into these deep, dark reservoirs of creation. In the Zohar, they're called the Tehomot, the primordial abysses. But look, this isn't about emptiness. This is the profound, silent darkness of unmanifested potential. It's the raw clay from which entire worlds are sculpted.
And from those depths, the light's journey just keeps going. It weaves through these incredibly intricate networks, and it stabilizes on structures called thrones. These are like centers of power, of governance. The streams all converge into great seas, these huge collections of energy and attributes, where the building blocks of our reality are gathered up and prepared for expression. It's a perfect, harmonious system of divine distribution.
But then, right then, from within those very waters, from the absolute heart of all that gathered potential, something begins to stir. A massive serpent. And here's the key. It's a process born not from outside the system, but from a distortion within it. And its presence introduces this subtle drag, this friction. The pure currents start to bend, the crystal-clear waters grow murky, and a shadow starts to fall across the light.
Okay, so that's the grand cinematic vision. Now let's actually break it down. To really get this, we're going to go on a 6-part journey. First, we'll stick with the vision of the cosmos itself. Then, we'll get into the primal lights, the building blocks. We'll explore the cosmic distribution grid to see how it all flows. After that, we have to confront the serpent in the waters. Then, we'll translate all this into 2 maps of reality for our modern minds. And finally, we'll take the party's journey to see what it all means for you and me.
To understand any system, you have to start with its most basic parts. In the Zohar's cosmology, reality isn't built from atoms or quarks. It's built from emanations of divine light, and these are called the Sefirot. You can think of them as the primary colors, the core attributes that combine to create everything we know and everything we experience.
So the Zohar really focuses our attention on the number 7. And this is no accident. Just like you have the 7 days of creation, there are 7 lower Sefirot that form the primary structure of our manifested reality. And these aren't just abstract ideas. They are 7 totally distinct frequencies, 7 foundational pillars that the entire world stands on. They represent the active, expressive qualities of the divine right here in creation.
Okay, now what's really, really cool about this is how the Zohar gives specific colors to these lights, which tell us about their core essence. So you have Chesed, which is this unbounded loving kindness, and it's represented by pure, brilliant white, the color of totally unrestricted giving. Then you have its opposite, Gevura, which is judgment, restraint, definition, and that's a powerful red. But here's the crucial part. The synthesis, Tiferet, or harmony, is represented by green. Now why green? Because in this mystical palette, green is the perfect mix of white and red. It's the flawless balance between mercy and judgment. And this balance, this green light, is the absolute bedrock for a stable, life-giving reality, which is then supported by the pillars of endurance, splendor, and foundation, and it all comes into expression down here in the kingdom of Malchut.
And believe it or not, the system gets even more intricate. These lights, they don't just hang out by themselves, they combine, they permute. The Zohar tells us there are 45 primary permutations or hues of these lights, and that number 45 is huge. In Gematria, the Hebrew system of numerology, 45 is the exact value of the word Adam, which means man. So what does that tell us? The cosmic blueprint for humanity itself is literally woven from these 45 combinations of divine light. It means the human soul is a microcosm of this entire cosmic process, a vessel designed to hold and harmonize all these different divine frequencies.
So we've got the lights, right? The energy source. But how does that energy get from this infinite source all the way down into our manifested reality? Well, the Zohar describes this absolutely stunning, complex architecture. It's like a kind of cosmic engineering project.
So let's take a look at the key components of this divine distribution grid.
We're going to start with the Tehomot, the great abysses. Now, like we said, these are not empty voids. Not at all. Think of them more like vast, deep reservoirs of pure potential. They're connected to the Sephira of Bina, or understanding. And why is that? Because Bina is the conceptual womb of creation. It's the level where the undifferentiated light of pure wisdom gets its very first conceptual form, where potential gets organized before it ever becomes manifest. The Tehomot are the deep waters from which all forms are ultimately drawn.
Okay, so how does the potential that's sitting in the Tehomot get distributed? It happens through the Tzia, the channels or conduits. And this just brilliantly shows how dynamic this whole system is. These aren't static pipes, no. They're the arteries and veins of the cosmic body. They're high-capacity pathways designed to carry the divine flow between all the different Sefirot, from the abysses to the thrones, making sure that energy gets delivered exactly where it needs to go to sustain all of creation.
All right, let's look at this slide and see how this whole thing builds into a complete journey. Step 1. Light originates from its infinite source. Step 2. It flows through the Sefirot, and that's where it picks up specific qualities: mercy, judgment, harmony. Step 3. This now attributed light travels through the Chinarot, the channels. Step 4. It descends into the Tehomoth, those deep reservoirs of potential. Step 5. Here it gathers in what the Zohar calls the Yamim, or seas, basically consolidated fields of potential. And finally, Step 6. The energy stabilizes upon the Kizaut, the thrones, which act as foundations or stable platforms for the established reality. This is the pristine, perfect, intended path of emanation.
So far, what we've described is a perfect, self-regulating system of divine flow. It sounds amazing, but the Zohar's vision, it's not a utopia. It's a drama. And every good drama needs a conflict. So now, we have to introduce the antagonist, and it's not some external devil, but a rogue process that springs up from within the divine system itself.
The Zohar says the serpent moves within these waters. And this is absolutely crucial. The serpent isn't some alien invader that came from outside creation. No, it is a potential for corruption that already exists within the system, specifically within the waters of the Tehomot and the Yamim, the realms of unmanifested potential and gathered energy. It represents a process of imbalance, a choice to receive the divine light for the self alone, which introduces what the text calls zohama, or pollution, and ultimately death into the flow. So what exactly is this zohama? You can think of it as spiritual pollution, a kind of metaphysical toxicity. It's the byproduct of imbalance. When that red light of Gevura, of pure, unfiltered judgment and restriction, isn't perfectly balanced by the white light of Chesed or mercy, it creates a residue. The Zohar actually associates this residue with the color black, describing it as the dregs of the wine. This zohama is the stuff that contaminates the pure flow, fragmenting the light, introducing chaos, and turning a life-giving system into one that contains mortality.
So let's compare these two states directly, side by side. In a state of pure flow, the right and left columns of the Sephirotic tree, mercy and judgment, they're in perfect harmony. The white and red lights are balanced, and the result is life-giving green. The flow is pure light, or ore. But when the serpent's influence gets in there, the system becomes corrupted. The right and left are in total discord. The red light of judgment just overwhelms the white light of mercy. The pure light fragments, and the Zohar makes this chilling wordplay here. The Hebrew word for light, or, gets twisted into mat, which is the word for death. The stable, life-giving flow becomes chaotic, polluted, and at the end of the day, lethal.
Now this is all incredibly profound, but let's be honest, it can also feel very abstract. I mean, concepts like cosmic serpents and primordial abysses, they can be hard to really wrap your head around. So to make this ancient wisdom truly accessible, we're going to map it onto two modern frameworks that I think a lot of us are deeply familiar with, a video game and an engineering schematic.
All right, for all the gamers watching, picture this. The world of creation is a massive, open-world map. The Tinsinarot, they're glowing rivers of energy that connect everything. The 7 Sefirot are the main zones or realms on the map, and each one has a distinct color and special properties. You've got a white mercy zone, a red judgment zone, and so on. But here's the problem, a corruption. This creeping darkness called Zoama is starting to pollute the rivers. It's causing lag and dimming the light in all the zones. And the source of this corruption is the final boss, a great serpent that has emerged from the deepest waters, the Tehomot. And your quest, should you choose to accept it, is to become the hero who can rebalance the flow of energy between the zones and ultimately cleanse the entire map of the serpent's toxic influence.
Okay, now for the engineers and the tech-minded folks out there. Think of creation as a multi-layered, distributed energy network. The divine will, that's the source code. The Sefirot are stable processing nodes, each one designed to handle a specific type of data or energy. The Sefirot are the high-bandwidth fiber optic conduits that ensure a perfect, low-latency flow between all the nodes. But a piece of sophisticated malware, a rogue process, the serpent, has self-generated within the system's deep memory reservoirs, the Tehomot. Its function is to introduce data corruption, that's the Zohar. And this creates destructive feedback loops, where unbalanced judgment just feeds on itself, causing latency, packet loss, and eventually cascading system failures across the entire network.
So we began this whole explainer with this grand, almost cinematic vision of the cosmos. We've deconstructed its mechanics, we've faced its central conflict, and we've even translated it into modern languages. So now, we bring it all together, and we conclude our journey through the Pardes, the mystical orchard of understanding.
Let's just quickly recap the path we took together. First, we had the vision, right? We witnessed the flow of divine light through its incredible cosmic architecture. Second, we dove deep into the mechanics, decoding the 7 primary lights, the meaning of the number 45, and the jobs of the Sefirot and Tehomot. Third, we confronted the conflict. We identified the serpent as an internal rogue process that introduces Zahama, or spiritual pollution, into the system. And finally, we did a translation, mapping this profound ancient wisdom onto the modern paradigms of gaming and engineering to make it immediately accessible.
And this brings us to the most important point of all. The Zohar isn't just describing some distant, abstract cosmology. It's giving us a map of our own inner reality. We are the system. Our consciousness is the vessel that these lights flow through, and our choices are what determine whether we balance mercy and judgment, or whether we allow the serpent of our own ego and imbalance to introduce pollution into our lives. So the final question isn't cosmic, it's personal. Now that you have seen the map of creation and its corruption, where in your own world, in your relationships, in your work, in your thoughts, do you begin to restore the flow?
Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes. We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week. If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.